My name is Claire, and for most of my life, I believed I understood exactly where I stood in my family. I wasn't the favorite child. I wasn't the one people celebrated or bragged about. I was simply the dependable one, the daughter who stayed quiet, solved problems, and never expected much in return. When my father passed away, I thought the hardest part would be saying goodbye. I had no idea that the real heartbreak was still waiting for me inside a lawyer's office. The funeral was quiet. Friends, neighbors, and distant relatives filled the church with flowers and polite condolences. Everyone talked about what a generous man my father had been, how much he loved his family, and how proud he was of his daughters. I listened without saying much, because the father they described wasn't always the father I knew growing up. For most of my childhood, my older sister Vanessa was the center of everything. She was beautiful, confident, and effortlessly charming. If she walked into a room, people noticed. Teachers adored her. Relatives constantly praised her. My parents built their world around her achievements. I was different, quiet, responsible, the child who never caused trouble. Whenever something needed to be done, people naturally looked at me. If the dishes needed washing, I did them. If groceries had to be picked up, I went. If someone had to cancel plans to help our parents, it was almost always me. No one asked if it was fair. It was simply expected. Growing up, I convinced myself that being dependable was enough. Maybe love didn't always look like attention. Maybe it looked like trust. That's what I kept telling myself. As we got older, our lives moved in different directions. Vanessa married first. She and her husband bought expensive cars, took luxury vacations, and lived as though money would never run out. My parents admired them endlessly. I built a quieter life. A steady job, a small apartment, and enough savings to feel secure. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Then everything changed 5 years before my father's death. He was diagnosed with heart disease. At first, everyone promised they would help. Vanessa said she'd handle appointments. My mother insisted we'd all share the responsibility. But promises have a funny way of disappearing once reality arrives. Within a few months, I was the one driving my father to every doctor's appointment, sitting beside him during long hospital visits, waiting while nurses ran tests that always seemed to take forever. Vanessa always had another reason she couldn't come. She was busy. Her husband needed something. Work was stressful. They had dinner reservations. There was always an excuse. First, Dad defended her. "She's just overwhelmed," he'd say with a tired smile. I nodded because arguing felt pointless. But over time, something changed between us. Those long drives became conversations. Sometimes we'd talk about baseball. Sometimes about old movies. Sometimes we'd drive for 20 minutes without saying anything at all. And somehow those silent moments meant just as much. For the first time in my life, I felt like my father wasn't simply looking through me. He was actually seeing me. One Sunday afternoon, after another appointment, we stopped at a small diner outside town. It wasn't anything special. Old booths, burnt coffee, the kind of place where everyone seemed to know each other's names. Dad stirred his coffee quietly before looking at me. "You know," he said, "I've spent a lot of years thinking success meant giving people things." I smiled. "What changed your mind?" He looked out the window for a long moment before answering. "Time." I didn't fully understand what he meant then, but those words stayed with me. From that day on, he called me every Sunday evening. Sometimes we talked for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. He asked about my work. He remembered little things I'd mentioned weeks earlier. For the first time in decades, I felt like I actually had a father. Looking back now, I think he knew his time was running out. I just didn't realize he was trying to leave me something far more valuable than money. Over the next few years, those Sunday phone calls became a tradition. No matter how busy life was, my father never forgot to call. Sometimes we'd laugh about old family stories. Other times he'd ask for my opinion on things that seemed surprisingly important to him. It felt strange because, for most of my life, nobody in my family had ever asked what I thought. His health continued to decline, but he rarely complained. Even when walking became difficult, he still insisted on making jokes in the waiting room. The nurses adored him. He'd smile, tell them they were working too hard, and somehow make everyone around him laugh. Then we'd get back in the car, and I'd notice how exhausted he really was. One evening, while I was helping him into the house, he stopped at the front door and looked at me. "Claire," he said quietly. "Thank you," I smiled. "For what?" "For showing up." I laughed and told him that wasn't something he needed to thank me for. He just nodded like he understood something I didn't. Looking back, I think he was trying to tell me much more than I realized. A few months later, he was gone. He passed away peacefully in his sleep. The phone rang just after 6 in the morning. I remember staring at the screen before answering because, somehow, I already knew why my mother was calling. The funeral came and went in a blur. People hugged me. They offered sympathy. They told me my father had been a wonderful man. I thanked them, but I barely remember any of their faces. Vanessa stood at the front of the church, accepting condolences as though she were hosting an event instead of mourning her father. Everyone surrounded her. Everyone asked if she was okay. Nobody asked me. I wasn't angry. I was used to it. A week later, we met at the office of my father's attorney, Mr. Dawson. The room smelled like old books and polished wood. Everything was quiet except for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. My mother sat beside Vanessa. They whispered to each other while I quietly took the chair closest to the window. Mr. Dawson entered with a thick folder under his arm. He offered his condolences before opening the file. "I know this is never an easy day," he said. "Your father wanted everything handled exactly according to his wishes." Vanessa smiled confidently. She looked completely relaxed, almost as if she already knew what was coming. Mr. Dawson began reading. "The family home, left to Vanessa. The investment accounts, left to Vanessa. The family business, transferred entirely to Vanessa." My mother smiled through her tears. Vanessa reached over and squeezed her hand. Then Mr. Dawson looked down at the final page. "Claire." For just a second, I allowed myself to hope. Perhaps Dad had remembered those Sunday drives, those hospital visits, those conversations that had meant so much to both of us. Instead, Mr. Dawson placed a small cardboard box on the table. "Your father requested that these personal photographs be given to you." I looked inside. Old family pictures, birthday cards, a few handwritten notes from my grandparents. Memories, nothing more. Then came the final sentence. "Claire will also assume responsibility for the outstanding family loan totaling approximately $11,000. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. I looked up. "I'm sorry. What loan?" Mr. Dawson adjusted his glasses. "It is documented as a family financial obligation assigned to your name." Assigned to my name. I had never borrowed that money. I had never signed for it. I didn't even know it existed. Before I could ask another question, Vanessa leaned back in her chair with a small smile. "Dad always said you were the strong one," she said. "You'll figure it out. You always do." Nobody corrected her. Nobody questioned why I was suddenly responsible for a debt I'd never heard of. I looked around the room. My mother avoided my eyes. Mr. Dawson remained professional and silent. Vanessa looked almost relieved. Something about the entire situation felt wrong. Not unfair. Wrong. Still, I signed the paperwork. I thanked Mr. Dawson for his time. I picked up the box of old photographs and walked out of the office carrying $11,000 of debt that wasn't mine. And for the first time since my father died, I wondered if I had ever truly known the man everyone insisted had loved us equally. For the next 2 weeks, I barely thought about anything except the debt. Every morning I woke up hoping the entire thing had been some kind of misunderstanding. Every night I opened my banking app, stared at the numbers, and wondered how long it would take me to pay off $11,000 that I'd never borrowed. The box of photographs stayed on my dining table. I couldn't bring myself to open it again. It felt less like an inheritance and more like a reminder that, even after everything, I'd still finish second. I told myself to move on. Life wasn't fair. Families weren't always fair. Maybe this was simply another lesson in accepting disappointment. Then my phone rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. The caller ID showed Mr. Dawson. I almost ignored it, assuming he'd forgotten a signature or needed another document. Instead, his voice was unusually serious. "Claire," he said, "I need you to come to my office this afternoon. There's something we need to discuss." My stomach tightened. "Is something wrong?" There was a brief silence. "I'd rather explain it in person." That was all he said. The entire drive there, my mind raced through every possible scenario. Had they found another debt? Was there a mistake in the paperwork? Had someone challenged the will? None of my guesses came close to the truth. When I arrived, Mr. Dawson was already waiting. There were no other family members, no assistants, just him and a thick envelope sitting neatly on his desk. He gestured for me to sit. Once I did, he slid the envelope toward me. "Before you open that," he said, "there's something you should know." I looked at him, confused. "After your father's funeral, I received instructions that could only be opened after a 14-day waiting period. Those instructions came directly from your father." I stared at him. "What instructions?" He took a slow breath. "Your father left a second will." For a moment, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. "A second will?" He nodded. "Not a replacement, an amendment, one that contained confidential conditions." I felt my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear him. "If this existed," I asked quietly, "why wasn't it read with the first one?" "Because your father specifically instructed me not to." Mr. Dawson opened the envelope carefully and removed several notarized documents. "The first will was always meant to be read publicly," he explained. "This document was only meant to be revealed if certain events took place after his death." I frowned. "What events?" He turned one of the pages toward me. "Before your father passed away, he discovered that the $11,000 debt assigned to you wasn't actually yours." I froze. "I knew it." He nodded. "It was originally taken out to help your sister's husband." My chest tightened. "What?" "Your brother-in-law had accumulated significant gambling debt. Your father agreed to help them quietly, but later discovered the debt had been transferred into your name without your knowledge." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, Dad knew?" "He found out only a few months before he died." I looked down at the papers. Every page carried my father's signature. Every page had been witnessed and notarized. Every detail had been carefully documented. Mr. Dawson continued, "Your father confronted Vanessa privately. According to his written statement, she admitted everything but begged him not to tell you. She promised she would repay the debt herself." I closed my eyes. She had looked me in the face during the will reading. She had smiled, and she had let me believe I deserved every bit of it. I felt sick. "There has to be more," I whispered. "There is." Mr. Dawson reached for the final document. "Your father believed Vanessa would eventually reveal her true intentions. That's why he included one final condition." He looked directly at me before speaking. "If Vanessa attempted to sell the family house or business within 1 year of his death, this amendment would immediately take effect." I leaned forward. "What amendment?" Mr. Dawson gave a small, knowing smile. "The one your father believed would finally make things right." I stared at Mr. Dawson, trying to process everything I just heard. What exactly did my father write? He slid the final document across the desk. "It states that if Vanessa sells either the family home or the business within 1 year of your father's passing, 40% of the entire estate will immediately transfer to you. The transfer would be retroactive, meaning the court would treat you as though you had always owned that share." I blinked. 40%? He nodded. "Your father believed that if Vanessa truly valued family more than money, she would keep the house and continue running the business. But if she sold everything for cash, he wanted the estate divided fairly." I couldn't speak. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like he had been protecting me all along. Then Mr. Dawson smiled. "There's one more thing you should know." "What is it?" He opened another folder. 3 weeks after the funeral, Your sister signed paperwork with a real estate agent." I frowned. "What paperwork?" "She listed the family home for sale." My heart skipped a beat. "The house? Already?" He nodded. "And 2 days later, she began negotiations to sell the business as well." Couldn't believe it. "Why?" Mr. Dawson looked down at the documents before answering. "According to financial records we obtained, her husband has accumulated far more debt than anyone realized." I slowly leaned back in my chair. So they needed cash. They needed it quickly. Everything suddenly made sense. The expensive vacations, the luxury cars, the constant excuses. It had all been financed by money they didn't actually have. And now they were trying to cash out my father's entire life's work before anyone noticed. Mr. Dawson folded his hands together. The moment those sale documents were signed, your father's clause became legally active. I looked at him in disbelief. "So, what happens now?" "We file with the court." Only 4 words, but somehow they felt heavier than everything else I'd heard that day. Over the next several weeks, my life became a blur of paperwork, legal meetings, and documents I never imagined I'd have to read. Every bank statement, every property record, every signature, everything pointed to the same conclusion. My father had anticipated exactly what would happen. He hadn't written the clause out of anger. He'd written it because he knew the truth. The hearing was scheduled for early autumn. I hadn't spoken to Vanessa since the funeral. Not once. The night before court, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. For almost a minute, I just stared at it. Finally, I answered. She didn't say hello. She went straight to the point. "You really filed this?" "I didn't file anything," I replied calmly. "Dad did." "You know what I mean." "No, I don't think I do." Her voice hardened. "You're trying to take what's mine." I couldn't help letting out a small laugh. For years, I thought exactly the opposite. Silence. Then she sighed. "You've always been jealous." Those words should have hurt. Instead, they made me realize something. She genuinely believed them. She honestly thought I wanted the money because I envied her. She had never understood that all I'd ever wanted was to be treated like I belonged. "I don't want your life, Vanessa," I said quietly. "I just want the truth." She hung up without another word. The next morning, we walked into the courthouse from opposite sides of the parking lot. She never looked at me. Neither did her husband. For the first time in my life, I wasn't nervous around them. I wasn't trying to earn anyone's approval anymore. Whatever happened inside that courtroom, I knew one thing for certain. My father had finally given me something no one in my family ever had. A voice. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. There were no dramatic speeches, no shouting, no emotional outbursts like you see in movies. Just lawyers, stacks of documents, and a judge who had probably heard hundreds of family disputes before ours. Vanessa sat across the room beside her husband. For the first time in years, she looked nervous. Mr. Dawson calmly presented my father's amendment to the court. Then he submitted the notarized letter my father had written just 3 months before his death. The judge spent several minutes reading it in complete silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Finally, the judge looked up. "This amendment is legally valid." I felt my heart stop for a second. He continued, "The conditions outlined by the deceased have clearly been met. The property was listed for sale within the restricted period, activating the redistribution clause exactly as written." Vanessa immediately stood. "This isn't fair." The judge looked at her calmly. "Your father created these conditions himself. The court's responsibility is to honor his wishes." Her attorney tried arguing that the clause was unfair and overly restrictive. The judge simply pointed to the notarized signatures. "The law isn't concerned with whether it's emotionally fair. It's concerned with whether it's legally enforceable." And it was. Perfectly. Within 20 minutes, it was over. The estate was officially redistributed. 40% of everything my father had built was transferred to me, exactly as he'd intended. Outside the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. There were no cheering crowds, just a gray afternoon and a quiet parking lot. Vanessa walked past me without saying a word. Her husband wouldn't even look in my direction. I watched them drive away and realized something surprising. I wasn't happy because I'd won. I wasn't relieved because of the money. What I felt was peace. For years, I'd convinced myself that maybe I really was less important. Maybe I was easier to overlook. Maybe I simply expected too much. But my father had seen everything. He'd seen who stayed, who helped, who answered the phone, who showed up when nobody else did. He couldn't change the years we'd already lost. But before he left this world, he made sure I would never question my worth again. A few weeks later, I finally opened the box of photographs he'd left me. Behind the last photo was a sealed envelope I hadn't noticed before. Simply read, "For Claire." My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. "My dear Claire, if you're reading this, then everything happened exactly the way I feared it would. I know this doesn't erase the years I failed you. I know I can't ask for forgiveness now. But I hope you know something I should have told you long ago. You were never the child who needed less. You were the child I worried about the most because I knew you'd carry everyone else's burdens without ever complaining. That wasn't strength. It was loneliness. I'm sorry I noticed it too late. The house isn't my legacy. The business isn't my legacy. You are. Live your life knowing you never had to earn my love. You always had it." By the time I reached the end of the letter, I couldn't hold back the tears. Not because of what I'd inherited, because for the first time in my entire life, I felt chosen. Every Sunday now, I still visit my father's grave. I bring fresh flowers, sit beside the headstone, and tell him about my week. Sometimes I laugh, sometimes I cry, but before I leave, I always say the same thing. Thank you for finally letting me know I mattered. If this story reminded you that kindness isn't weakness and that the truth always finds its way into the light, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about family, justice, and unexpected endings, don't forget to subscribe. There's always another story waiting.